So here I am with you again. I want to just take the time to give a little commentary on what I call Election Day aftermath. It is 2 days after the historic, and I do use that word loosely, historic 11/9/2016 election. And if you look at social media at this time, there is still, even 2 days later, a frenzy, a sense of mourning, still a sense of division. But I pray and I believe that some things will be worked out. It's just a part of the process. I myself work my day job in local government to some degree, or at least have an understanding of local government and local politics. And so being in it is one thing, and I think you get a different vantage point. And I'd like to share 5 things that I myself have observed as it relates to politics and governance that may prove helpful to some folks and help them get through 2016, 2017, 18, 19, all the way to 20. I know some folks are already counting down. 5 rules for entertainment, if you will. Number one is that government, our government at least, is not a direct democracy, but what we call a representative democracy, which means that we elect, we choose, we select, however you want to say, we vote for a handful, a few, to represent and speak on behalf of the interests of the many. Now, what you have to understand in that context is that it then means that we have to be extremely intentional and careful about those we choose to represent us and our interests once they get into elected office. You have to be sure that they don't just talk a good game, but they truly are representative of your interests and agenda. If not, what you find is that people become elected, and then your interests still, even though you voted for them, selected them, chose them, however you choose to say it, you will still find that your interests are not met. It is a representative democracy, which means that someone that I choose will go to Washington, will go to our local city council, will go to our state government, wherever, and they will speak on my behalf, almost in proxy as if they were me. You need to make sure that the people you vote for, to some degree, if not to a large degree, are representative of who you are. That's number one. But number two, our government and life, I believe, are based on a series of self-interest. And it's sad, but it's true. And in that environment, you need to understand that because people are always driven toward their own self-interest, that there has become, if not always been, a correlation between, direct correlation between money and politics, and maybe an indirect correlation as a result between businesses and politics. Or I probably could even reverse that there's a direct correlation between business and politics and an indirect correlation between money and politics. The point here is this: you have to be mindful of the money, or as some people say, follow the money. Who's giving the money? Who's lobbying? Who's influencing our government? Because understand, in an environment, particularly this type of environment where there's money needed to run campaigns, and there's money needed for certain initiatives in city government, and there's money needed here and there, and there are people who are so-called philanthropists and some who are not. They're just business people who would choose to influence government by the infusion of their dollars. In that type of environment, dangerously and oddly enough, that those who don't have money per se may be prone to being left out. Now, why is that? Because people generally don't really become as engaged as they should. And I'll say that again. That's a side note, sidebar. People who should be engaged generally are not as engaged as they should. So, number one, we're not a direct democracy, but a representative democracy. And number two, driven by self-interest, so the infusion of money is prevalent. But number three, people are generally disengaged as it relates to government and are lazy. I'll go as far and say they're lackadaisical, taking the gift of this democracy for granted. As a result, most of us, and when I say most of us, I'm not talking about me or you, but more than likely someone that we know. Most of us choose style over substance when electing officials. Listen, this last election that we just saw, over 45% of people did not vote. Did not vote for a president. You know, Secretary of State Clinton received about 25.6% of the vote, and Mr. Donald J. Trump, 25.6%. That is absolutely ridiculous. Both of them would have lost by 20 percentage points if the candidate's name was "I'm not voting." That's something to look at, and that's not just because we don't produce good candidates, even though I would argue that this particular time around, the candidates were, to say the least, lacking what most of us wanted. But in that environment, style, as we've just seen it, has a lot to do with some of our decision making. We want to hear how someone talks. We want to see what waves they make in the media. 30-second, 1-minute sound bites. Whoever can make the splash, make the impression, makes the impression, versus someone who really knows what they're doing. And this is dangerous because it forces us to choose actors instead of the real deal. Because oftentimes the truth is a whole lot less interesting than the tall tale. However, it does stand. Number four, and I'll move on quickly. Politics, I believe, is a system. And it is a system that bends toward the status quo, the way we've always done things. It's hidden under or behind the veneer of majority rule, but it's really not majority rule at all. It's our desire to keep things the same. The good old boy network wants to continue with the good old ways. That's what politics is. Now, every now and then you'll have a President Barack Obama. You'll have a female here or there. You'll have exceptions. You'll have anomalies, deviations from this particular system. But because this system is designed to bend toward the status quo, eventually it is designed to adjust to those anomalies, adjust to those exceptions, and bend right back to the status quo. The danger in this is that things don't change unless we are willing to move the needle with some type of aggression so that it might be changing. But finally, and then I'll leave everybody alone, as it relates to this year and what I've learned or at least observed and been reaffirmed in politics is, and this is the good news, consider that the system is flawed, yet it's better than many around the world. For over 240 years, this experiment called democracy has worked better than it has in other places, or better than other forms of government. If you are dissatisfied, I leave you with this. Use the old adage, apply it to your life. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. What's important is that we do not become cynical, that we do not check out, that we do not give up, that we do not resign ourselves to abdicate responsibility to others, but that we continue to do the work. We strategize, we mobilize, we get involved, we put ourselves on the line, that we become the change that we want to see. Because if you continue to try, if I continue to try, if we with vigor, vociferously stand up for what we believe is right, then I believe eventually, we will see the type of greatness that we expect from our nation. So I pray that all is well, and I pray that we are able to learn to accept the system and work within this particular system to bring about the change that needs to be brought about so that America truly can be great. Not just again, but be great.